won't believe what this poor woodcutter uncovers in the dark forest. A secret so powerful, it could change everything. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a man everyone called Poor. His name was Kofi, and he didn't own much. His clothes were old and torn, and his house was small and humble. The villagers often laughed at him, calling him names like the Poor Woodcutter. But Kofi wasn't sad. He had something no one else had, a big, kind heart. He loved his wife deeply, even though they had no children. Every day, Kofi would go deep into the forest to cut trees, hoping one day something good would happen to him. Little did he know, something magical was about to change his life forever. Kofi tried his best, but no one in the village liked him. They called him poor and useless, and no one ever smiled at him. When he passed by, people would laugh or turn away. Kofi didn't understand why they were so cruel. He worked hard, cutting trees in the forest to earn just enough for food and his wife. Some villagers even said that bad things always happened to him because he was poor. But Kofi didn't let their words hurt him. Little did he know, something strange and mysterious was waiting for him in the forest, something that would change everything. Even though Kofi was poor, he had something special. He loved his wife more than anything. They had no children, but they shared a deep bond that made them happy. Every day, Kofi would work hard in the forest, always thinking about how he could make his wife smile. They would sit by the fire at night, talking about their dreams. Kofi promised her that one day things would get better, but something strange was happening. As Kofi worked in the forest, he began to notice odd signs, unusual animal tracks and whispers in the wind. Something mysterious was stirring in the trees. Every morning, Kofi would leave his small house and walk into the dark, quiet forest. He would carry his axe, hoping to find trees to chop. The forest was thick and full of secrets. Birds chirped above, and strange sounds echoed from deep within the trees. Kofi didn't mind. He was used to it. But on this day, something felt different. The air was heavy, and the leaves rustled in a way that seemed to whisper his name. Kofi couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching him. He shrugged it off and continued his work, but the feeling grew stronger. One morning, the sky was filled with dark clouds. Kofi knew the rain was coming, but he had to finish his work. He grabbed his axe and headed toward the forest, despite the growing storm. The wind howled and the trees swayed as if they were alive. As Kofi cut the trees, the rain began to fall, heavy and cold. Suddenly, he heard something strange, a soft cry coming from deep within the forest. Curious, he walked towards the sound, his heart racing. Was it an animal or something else? The cry echoed again, more urgent this time, pulling Kofi deeper into the woods. Kofi followed the strange sound, his feet splashing through the puddles in the wet forest. The cry grew louder, but it didn't sound like any animal he had ever heard. As he pushed through thick bushes, he stumbled upon a small clearing. There, in the middle, he saw something surprising. A baby snake. It was trapped, struggling as a hungry hyena moved closer. Kofi's heart raced. Without thinking, he grabbed a stick and chased the hyena away. The baby snake looked up at him, its eyes full of fear and trust. Was it strange luck or something more mysterious at work? The hyena snarled as it stepped closer to the trapped baby snake. Its eyes were full of hunger, and it growled loudly, ready to strike. Kofi's heart raced as he quickly picked up a thick branch from the ground. With all his strength, he swung it at the hyena, making it run away into the trees. The baby snake lay still, looking at Kofi with wide, curious eyes. Kofi bent down to check on it, but something felt strange. The snake's eyes seemed to be watching him. He shook his head, thinking it was just his imagination, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave. The rain began to pour even harder, and Kofi knew it was time to go home. He looked at the baby snake one more time, still feeling uneasy. It was just a baby snake, he told himself, nothing more. But as he turned to leave, he heard the snake's soft hiss. Kofi paused. Was it trying to say something? The sound seemed to echo in his mind, though he couldn't make sense of it. He shook his head again, deciding he had to go. The jungle was too dangerous in this storm. But as he walked home, the strange feeling that something important had just happened stayed with him. As Kofi walked home through the heavy rain, he couldn't stop thinking about the baby snake. Something about it felt important, like it wasn't just any snake. His thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of something moving behind him. He turned quickly, but there was nothing there, just the dark, wet trees. He shook his head, feeling silly for being so nervous. But as he reached his small home, he couldn't shake the feeling that the snake had been watching him in a way no animal ever had. What was it trying to tell him? He couldn't understand, but he felt that one day he would. The next few days were quiet. Kofi went back to the forest to chop wood, but he couldn't stop thinking about the baby snake. He kept wondering if it was just a coincidence or if there was something more to it. One evening as he worked, he noticed strange footprints near the place where he had saved the snake. They were unlike any animal tracks he had ever seen. They were small, but they seemed to lead into the thick forest, disappearing behind a large rock. Kofi felt a shiver run down his spine. What did those tracks mean? Who or what was following him? The rain began to fall again, this time heavier than before. Kofi looked up, noticing how the clouds seemed to swirl around the forest like a dark, angry shadow. He tried to shake off the strange feeling in his stomach, but it wouldn't go away. He walked quickly, hoping to finish his work before the storm grew worse. The wind howled, making the trees creak and groan. But then something caught his eye, something shiny, half buried in the mud. Kofi bent down to look. It was a small glittering stone. He reached for it, but as soon as his fingers touched it, the ground beneath him trembled. What was happening? Kofi quickly grabbed the shiny stone and shoved it into his pocket. The wind howled louder and the rain was now falling in sheets. He knew he had to get home fast. As he hurried through the forest, the trees seemed to move in the wind, casting eerie shadows that made the forest feel alive. Strange whispers echoed through the air, but Kofi couldn't understand them. The deeper he walked, the stronger the feeling that he wasn't alone grew. It was as if something was following him. His heart raced, and he quickened his pace, desperate to reach the safety of his home. Kofi finally reached home, his clothes soaked from the rain. His wife, Afia, was waiting for him by the fire, her warm smile lighting up the room. But Kofi couldn't shake the strange feeling from the forest. "Are you all right?" Afia asked, noticing his worried look. Kofi hesitated, then smiled weakly. "I'm fine, just tired," he said, trying to hide his unease. But he couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious stone in his pocket and the whispers in the forest. Why had the ground trembled? And what was the strange energy that seemed to follow him? He couldn't tell Afia yet. A few days passed and Kofi tried to forget about the strange events in the forest. He returned to his normal routine, cutting trees and caring for his wife. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for him. One evening, as he sat by the fire, he noticed a small stone on the table. It glowed faintly in the dim light. Kofi reached for it, but as soon as his fingers touched it, The air around him seemed to grow cold. The room felt different, like something unseen was watching him. What was this stone, and why did it feel so powerful? Days later, Kofi returned to the forest, his mind still full of questions. The rain had stopped, but the forest felt different, darker, deeper. He walked through the trees, feeling like something was watching him. The air seemed thick with secrets. As he worked, the ground beneath him shifted, like something was stirring beneath the earth. Suddenly, Kofi noticed something strange, a trail of unusual footprints leading deep into the jungle. They were too small for a wild animal. His heart pounded. Who or what had left them? With every step he took, the forest seemed to grow more mysterious. That night, the forest felt even more mysterious. Kofi had stayed later than usual, and the moonlight barely touched the ground through the thick trees. Shadows danced in strange shapes, and the wind whispered softly, like it was trying to tell him something. As he walked, he heard a faint rustling behind him. When Kofi turned around, there was nothing there, just the quiet, dark woods. But the strange feeling didn't go away. The deeper he went, the more the forest seemed alive, as if the trees themselves were watching him. Was he alone, or was something else out there waiting? Kofi walked further into the jungle, his feet crunching on the damp ground. The trees grew thicker and the air felt colder, even though it was a warm night. Every now and then he could hear strange sounds, soft hisses, and the sound of something moving in the bushes. But when he looked, there was nothing there. Kofi's heart started to beat faster. It felt like the jungle was closing in around him. Suddenly he stepped on something hard and looked down. It was a shiny, strange rock, just like the one he had found before. How could it be here? Kofi picked up the shiny rock, feeling a chill run through him. He didn't remember seeing anything like it in the jungle before. As he looked around, he realized he had walked far deeper than usual. The trees seemed different here, taller, with thick vines hanging down. The ground felt softer, almost like it was breathing. Kofi's stomach tightened with fear. Where was he? It didn't look like the forest he knew. The air smelled strange, almost like flowers, but there was something eerie about it. Something wasn't right. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had entered a place he wasn't meant to be. Kofi walked deeper into the strange part of the forest, feeling more and more confused. The trees around him were huge, their trunks twisted in odd shapes. Suddenly he saw something that made his heart race. In front of him, there was a giant stone archway covered in vines and glowing softly. He stepped closer and realized it wasn't just an arch. There were snake symbols carved all over it. It looked ancient, like a doorway to another world. Kofi hesitated. Was he really standing in a snake kingdom? The air felt heavy, and a strange quiet surrounded him. What was waiting inside? As Kofi stood before the stone arch, he suddenly heard a low growl. He froze. From the shadows, two glowing eyes appeared. Then another pair. Slowly, two huge tigers stepped out of the dark, their teeth sharp and their eyes full of hunger. Kofi's heart raced. He had never seen tigers like this before. They weren't like normal tigers. These looked evil. Their fur was dark, and their growls were deep and scary. Kofi turned to run, but the tigers were fast. He couldn't escape. The air around him felt thick and heavy, like the jungle itself was trapping him. Kofi's feet pounded the ground as he ran through the dark forest, his breath quick and shallow. The tigers were close behind, their growls echoing in his ears. His heart raced with fear, but the path ahead was getting harder to see. Branches whipped at his face, and the forest felt like it was closing in on him. Suddenly, Kofi stumbled and fell to the ground. The tigers were almost there. He could feel their hot breath on his back. Just as he thought it was over, A loud hiss filled the air. A huge shape moved quickly toward him. What was happening? Kofi tried to get up, but his legs felt weak. The tigers were too close. He could see their sharp claws and hear their growls growing louder. Panic spread through him as he realized there was no way to escape. The jungle seemed to hold him in place, like the trees themselves were trapping him. Just as the tigers lunged, a massive shadow swooped down from above. Kofi looked up in shock. It was a huge snake. The snake's body wrapped around the tigers, pushing them away with strength Kofi had never seen before. Was this the same snake he saved? Kofi watched in awe as the giant snake fought off the tigers. With powerful, swift moves, it pushed the tigers away, causing them to retreat into the shadows. The jungle fell silent again. Kofi's heart still pounded in his chest, but he felt a strange sense of safety now. The giant snake turned to him, its eyes glowing softly in the dark. Kofi felt a shiver run down his spine, but the snake didn't attack. Instead, it slowly moved closer, as if studying him. Was it the same baby snake he had saved? Kofi couldn't believe his eyes. Something magical was happening. The giant snake slowly slithered closer to Kofi, its eyes never leaving his. Then, to Kofi's surprise, the snake raised its head and he saw something familiar, a small baby snake wrapped around its neck. Kofi's heart skipped a beat. It was the same baby snake he had saved from the hyena days ago. The baby snake looked at him with its wise eyes, almost as if it remembered him. The giant snake hissed softly and nudged Kofi with its head. Kofi felt both amazed and confused. Was this all a strange dream? Or had the baby snake really come back to help him? The giant snake slithered closer to Kofi, its eyes softening as it watched him. Then, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere, it spoke. "You helped me once. Now, I can help you." Kofi felt a strange calm wash over him. The snake lifted its head, revealing something sparkling on its forehead, a glowing gem. "This is a gift," the snake said. "It will bring you what you need, but use it wisely." Kofi reached out, his hands shaking. The gem was cool to the touch. How could this small act of kindness lead to something so powerful? What was this gem really for? Kofi took the glowing gem carefully, feeling its strange energy in his hands. As soon as his fingers touched it, a sudden warmth spread through his body. His mind seemed to clear, and he felt stronger, braver, like the forest itself was alive with magic. The baby snake coiled around his arm, looking up at him with a knowing gaze. Kofi stared at the gem, wondering what its true power was. "Use it well," the giant snake whispered. Just then, Kofi heard a rustling in the bushes behind him. He turned, but there was nothing there. Was someone or something watching him? Kofi carefully put the gem into his pocket, still feeling its warmth. He turned to leave, but as he stepped forward, a soft voice whispered, "Don't go." Kofi froze. It wasn't the snake or the baby snake. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, yet no one was there. "Who's there?" Kofi called out, his voice shaking. The wind howled around him and the trees creaked as if they were alive. "You've been chosen," the voice continued. "The gem holds more power than you know. But remember, every gift has a price." Kofi's heart skipped a beat. What price was he about to pay? Kofi's hands shook as he tried to make sense of the mysterious voice. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The wind swirled around him, growing colder, and the trees seemed to bend closer, listening. "The gem will bring you riches," the voice said, "but it will also bring danger. Kofi felt a chill run down his spine. He had always dreamed of being rich, but he never imagined it would come with a warning. What kind of danger? And who was speaking to him from the shadows of the jungle? The answers felt so far away. The wind grew stronger, and the trees seemed to whisper secrets. Kofi's heart raced. He felt the weight of the gem in his pocket, its warmth growing stronger with every passing second. He couldn't ignore the voice now. It was all around him. "You've made your choice," the voice whispered again. Kofi's breath caught in his throat. Had he? Was taking the gem really a choice? He had never meant to become part of something so strange. The forest around him grew darker, and the shadows seemed to move. Something wasn't right. Kofi had to find out what was happening before it was too late. Kofi took a deep breath and looked around, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows in the trees seemed to move, twisting into strange shapes. Then, from behind a large tree, he saw something. It was a figure, tall, dark, and completely still. Kofi's heart skipped a beat. The figure didn't move, but its eyes gleamed in the darkness. He couldn't tell if it was a person or something else entirely. As Kofi stepped forward, the figure slowly disappeared into the trees, vanishing like smoke. Who was it? Was it another warning, or had he stumbled onto something even darker? Kofi stood still, his heart racing. The figure was gone, but the air still felt thick with mystery. The wind whispered through the trees again, and Kofi heard a soft voice, different from the one before, but just as clear. "You are being watched." Kofi's breath caught in his throat. Who was watching him? And why? He turned in every direction, but saw nothing. The forest seemed silent, yet he could feel eyes on him, hidden in the shadows. He clutched the gem tightly in his hand, wondering if it was somehow connected to these strange events. Was he really ready for whatever was coming? Kofi's legs felt weak as he stood in the middle of the strange forest. The air around him was heavy with silence, but his mind raced with questions. Who was watching him? Why had the figure disappeared? And what did the gem really do? As he walked deeper into the jungle, he noticed something unusual. A path he had never seen before, lined with glowing stones. The stones seemed to pulse with light, leading him further into the unknown. Kofi hesitated, but something inside him urged him to follow. Could this path be the key to the mystery, or would it lead him into more danger? Kofi followed the glowing stones, feeling a strange pull in his chest. The path was quiet, but every step he took seemed to echo in the silent jungle. The trees around him grew taller, and the air became warmer, almost like he was walking into a hidden world. Suddenly, the stones stopped glowing. Kofi looked up and saw a large, ancient tree standing alone in the middle of the path. Its branches were twisted, and strange symbols were carved into its trunk. Kofi felt his heart race. Was this tree the heart of the forest? And what secrets did it hold? Kofi approached the ancient tree cautiously. Its massive roots twisted like snakes, and the symbols on its bark seemed to shimmer faintly in the moonlight. As he touched the tree, a strange feeling filled his body, a mixture of warmth and cold. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the forest, and the ground beneath Kofi's feet shook. The tree's branches creaked and began to move, parting slowly like a door opening. Kofi stepped back, unsure of what was happening. Was this tree alive, or was it something magical holding the answers to the strange events he had experienced? The tree's branches moved apart, revealing a dark, narrow opening in its trunk. Kofi hesitated, unsure if he should enter. His heart raced with both fear and excitement. The air around the entrance felt different, thicker, cooler, like it was hiding something. He could feel the gem in his pocket growing warmer, almost as if it was calling him. After a deep breath, Kofi stepped forward, his foot touching the soft earth inside the tree. The moment he entered, the entrance closed behind him, trapping him in darkness. Was this the secret of the jungle? What lay hidden inside this ancient tree? Inside the tree, it was completely dark. Kofi could hear nothing but his own breathing, which sounded loud in the silence. But then, something changed. He began to hear faint whispers, like voices coming from the walls of the tree itself. The whispers grew louder, but he couldn't understand them. The air felt heavy, and Kofi could feel his heart pounding in his chest. "Who's there?" he whispered. Suddenly, the whispers stopped. The ground beneath him trembled, and the tree's walls began to glow softly, revealing strange markings that seemed to move. What was this place, and why was he brought here? The glowing markings on the tree's walls began to shift, like they were alive. Kofi stepped closer, his eyes wide with wonder. The symbols seemed to dance and change before his eyes, forming shapes he didn't understand. Suddenly, one symbol glowed brighter than the others. It looked like a snake coiled around a tree. As Kofi stared at it, the ground beneath him rumbled again, and a low voice echoed in the tree. "You found the heart," the voice said, sounding ancient and wise. "The path ahead is dangerous. Only the brave can pass." Kofi felt a chill. Was he truly brave enough? The voice in the tree echoed again, its tone heavy and full of mystery. "The heart of the forest holds many secrets, but not all should be known. Some power is better left untouched." Kofi felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Was this voice warning him to turn back? But his curiosity grew stronger, and he couldn't ignore the pull of the glowing symbol. "What will happen if I go forward?" Kofi asked, his voice trembling. The tree's walls shook gently, and the voice answered, "Only those chosen by the forest can survive its trials." Kofi took a deep breath. Was he chosen? The tree's voice seemed to grow quieter as the glowing symbols faded back into the dark. Kofi stood frozen, unsure what to do next. He could feel the gem in his pocket pulsing gently, as if urging him forward. The whispering voice spoke once more. "The trials ahead will test your heart. Only the pure can pass through." Kofi felt both scared and excited. What did the trials mean? What kind of tests would he face? He stepped forward, determined to find out. The walls of the tree began to shift, opening a narrow passageway ahead, leading deeper into the unknown. Kofi stepped carefully into the narrow passageway, his heart pounding. The air was cool and smelled like earth, but there was something strange in the air, like magic. As he moved forward, the walls of the passage seemed to close in, leaving only enough room for him to squeeze through. The path twisted and turned, and the ground beneath his feet was soft, like walking on thick moss. Suddenly, the passage split into two directions. One way was dark and silent, while the other was filled with a soft, glowing light. Which way should he go? What awaited him in each direction? Kofi stood still, staring at the two paths ahead. The dark path seemed cold and quiet, like it was hiding something. The glowing path, on the other hand, was warm and inviting, but Kofi couldn't shake the feeling that it might be a trap. His hand brushed against the gem in his pocket, and it began to glow softly as if guiding him. The whispers from the tree seemed to return, but this time they were harder to understand. "Choose carefully," they murmured. Kofi felt his heart race. Was he ready for whatever lay ahead? The decision felt so important. Kofi closed his eyes for a moment, trying to listen to his heart. The glowing path felt safe, but the dark path felt full of secrets. He took a deep breath and chose the glowing one, trusting the gem's warmth. As he stepped forward, the light seemed to grow brighter, but the air around him turned colder. He looked back, but the dark path had disappeared, leaving only the glowing trail behind him. The whispers grew louder again, like voices calling his name. "You have chosen," they said. But what did that mean? What awaited him at the end of this mysterious path? Kofi walked carefully along the glowing path, his eyes fixed on the light ahead. The ground beneath him felt soft, like moss, and the air was cool. Suddenly, the light in front of him grew brighter, and the path opened into a large chamber. The walls of the chamber were covered with strange, glowing symbols, much like the ones he had seen on the tree. In the center of the room, there was a pedestal with an empty space, as if waiting for something. Kofi felt a strange pull. Was the pedestal waiting for the gem? What would happen if he placed it there? Kofi stepped into the chamber, his eyes wide with wonder. The pedestal in the center seemed to call him. He slowly took the glowing gem from his pocket and held it carefully in his hands. As soon as his fingers touched the pedestal, the ground beneath him trembled. The symbols on the walls began to glow even brighter, and the air grew thick with energy. Kofi's heart raced as the pedestal shifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was another gem, even brighter and more beautiful than the one he held. What was this new gem? And what did it mean for Kofi? Kofi's fingers trembled as he picked up the second gem from the pedestal. It sparkled with a strange light, much brighter than the first. As soon as he touched it, the ground beneath him shook again, and the room seemed to spin. The symbols on the walls flashed, and a low voice echoed through the chamber. "Two gems, two choices," the voice said, its tone deep and mysterious. Kofi's heart beat faster. What did it mean? He now held both gems, but what would happen if he used them together? Would he unlock the forest's greatest secret, or something dangerous? Kofi held the two glowing gems, feeling their warmth in his hands. The air around him felt charged, like something was about to happen. The low voice echoed again. "With the second gem, you must make a choice. Use them wisely." Kofi's mind raced. What choices did he have? What was the forest asking him to do? He looked at the gems, wondering what would happen if he combined them. Could they unlock something powerful, or would it cause trouble? He had to decide, but the more he thought, the more confusing it became. What if one gem was a trap? Kofi stared at the two gems in his hands, feeling torn. The bright light from them seemed to promise something great, but his heart was filled with doubt. What if the gems are a trap? Kofi thought. He felt the air grow heavier, like the forest was watching him. The whispers returned, but this time they sounded different, more urgent, almost warning him. He had to make a choice. Should he place both gems together or leave them separate? The chamber seemed to grow darker, and the symbols on the wall swirled faster. Kofi knew that whatever he chose, it would change everything. Kofi felt his heart race as he held the two gems. He could feel their power pulling him in different directions. With a deep breath, he placed them together on the pedestal. The moment they touched, the room shook violently. The light from the gems grew so bright, Kofi had to close his eyes. When he opened them again, the chamber had changed. The walls were covered in more symbols, and the air felt colder. A strange figure appeared before him, its eyes glowing. "You have unlocked the path," the figure said in a voice that echoed through Kofi's mind. What path? The figure in front of Kofi was tall and shadowy, its glowing eyes watching him closely. Kofi felt a mix of fear and curiosity. "What is this path?" he asked, his voice shaking. The figure didn't answer at first, only raised its hand toward the glowing symbols on the walls. Slowly, the symbol shifted, revealing a new door hidden in the stone. "This is the way," the figure said, its voice quahun and distant. "But beware, for once you step through, there is no turning back." Kofi's heart thudded. What lay beyond the door? Was he ready for whatever came next? Kofi took a deep breath and stepped toward the new door. It was carved with strange markings, just like the walls. The figure watched him, its glowing eyes never blinking. Kofi reached out and touched the door. It felt cool like stone, but with a pulse of energy running through it. The door slowly creaked open, revealing a dark hallway that seemed to stretch on forever. The air smelled ancient, and a strange chill ran down Kofi's spine. "This is where the path leads," the figure whispered. Kofi had no choice now. He had to enter the dark hallway, no matter what lay ahead. Kofi stepped into the dark hallway, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The walls were made of cold stone, and the air was thick with mystery. As he moved forward, the hallway seemed to stretch on endlessly. He reached out, touching the walls, hoping for some sign, but they felt smooth and unyielding. The farther Kofi walked, the more the shadows seemed to follow him. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from behind him. Kofi spun around, but there was nothing there. Was something following him? The darkness felt alive, and Kofi could sense that something unknown was waiting in the shadows. Kofi's heart began to race as the mysterious thud echoed again, louder this time. He turned quickly, but the hallway was empty. Only the shadows moved in the dim light. He continued walking, each step feeling heavier than the last. The air around him grew colder, and the sound of footsteps followed his own, but no one was there. Kofi reached for the gem in his pocket, hoping it would give him strength. Suddenly, the shadows in front of him shifted, and a soft whisper floated in the air. "You're getting closer," it said. "The truth awaits. But can you handle it?" Kofi stopped in his tracks, his mind racing. The whisper had come from nowhere. "The truth awaits." What did that mean? His hand gripped the gem tightly, its glow now faint but warm against his palm. The shadows around him seemed to grow darker, stretching like long fingers toward him. The hallway continued, twisting in ways that made Kofi feel lost. Every step seemed to echo too loudly, like the walls were alive, listening. The whisper came again, this time clearer. "Not all secrets are meant to be found." Kofi wondered, was he ready for what lay ahead? What secret was hidden here? Kofi continued walking, the whisper still echoing in his mind. As he moved deeper, he noticed a faint light ahead. It wasn't from the gem or the shadows. It was coming from a small door at the end of the hallway. The door was old, covered with strange carvings and glowing softly. Kofi's heart raced. Was this the place the whisper spoke of? He stepped closer, but as he reached for the door handle, the ground beneath him shook. The door creaked open by itself, revealing a dark room beyond. Kofi hesitated, feeling both afraid and curious. What was inside this room? Kofi stepped through the open door, and as soon as he did, the door slammed shut behind him with a loud bang. He spun around, but it was too late. The room was dark, with no way out. The only light came from the gem in his pocket, now glowing brighter than ever. As his eyes adjusted, he saw shadows moving along the walls. The shadows seemed to reach out, stretching toward him like hands. Kofi stepped back, feeling his heart beat faster. What were these shadows? And what did they want? He had to find out, but fear kept him frozen. Kofi's heart pounded as the shadows around him twisted and grew. He couldn't understand why they were moving, but they seemed to be alive, watching him. Then one of the shadows slowly took shape, forming into a figure. The figure spoke in a low, soft voice. "You've come far," it said, "but do you understand what you've awakened?" Kofi took a step back, his hands trembling. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The figure didn't answer right away. Instead, it reached out a shadowy hand, pointing toward a glowing symbol on the floor. What was it? Kofi followed the figure's pointing hand and saw a glowing symbol on the floor. It was a circle with strange lines and shapes inside, glowing brightly in the dark room. The shadows seemed to dance around it, making the symbol look alive. Kofi stepped closer, his curiosity growing stronger. The figure's voice echoed again. "Step on the symbol," it said. Kofi hesitated. Should he listen? What would happen if he did? He glanced around, feeling the shadows closing in. With a deep breath, Kofi placed his foot on the symbol. Suddenly, the room began to shake, and a loud sound filled the air. What was happening? As soon as Kofi's foot touched the glowing symbol, the ground beneath him trembled. The walls of the room cracked, and the shadows twisted faster, swirling like a storm. Kofi's heart raced. Was he in danger? The figure's voice grew louder, warning him. "You have started it. There is no turning back now." The air grew thick, almost like it was suffocating him. Suddenly, the cracks in the walls began to glow, revealing hidden doors and strange markings. Kofi could feel the power of the room pulling him in. Was this the beginning of something bigger? What had he unleashed? Kofi looked around, his eyes wide in wonder. The cracks in the walls had opened to reveal hidden doors, each glowing with a different color. The shadows seemed to guide him, pointing toward one door in particular. Kofi's curiosity pushed him forward, but his feet felt heavy. The air around him was thick with power, as if the room itself was alive. "Choose wisely," the figure whispered, its voice now deep and echoing. Kofi felt both scared and excited. What lay behind these doors? Was one of them the answer to the mystery, or would it lead him into even more danger? Kofi stood before the glowing doors, unsure which one to open. Each one seemed to hold a secret, but he couldn't tell which one was the right path. The shadows whispered softly, almost like they were talking to each other. He felt his hand reach out toward the red door, which glowed the brightest. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the room, and the air grew cold. Kofi's heart raced. Was the red door the right choice? The figure's voice warned again. The path you choose will decide everything. Kofi took a deep breath. He had to decide now. Kofi's hand trembled as he touched the red door. It felt warm under his fingers, and the moment he pushed it open, a bright light poured out. The shadows seemed to shrink away and the room grew still. Kofi stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind him. He found himself in a new, strange place. The ground was soft, like grass, and the air smelled fresh, but the sky above was dark and swirling. It was like nothing Kofi had ever seen. "Welcome," a voice whispered, but there was no one in sight. What had he walked into? What was waiting for him? Kofi looked around, feeling both amazed and confused. He was no longer in the dark room. Instead, he was in a strange world, filled with glowing trees and sparkling rivers. The sky above was dark with swirling clouds, but the ground was soft and glowing with tiny lights. The voice whispered again, "This is where the path leads, but only those with courage can stay." Kofi felt nervous, but his curiosity pushed him forward. As he walked, he noticed strange creatures watching him from the shadows. Were they friendly, or did they hold the key to the mystery he needed to solve. As Kofi walked deeper into the glowing world, he felt the eyes of the strange creatures on him. Some were small and shimmering, while others were large, with glowing eyes that seemed to follow his every move. Kofi's heart raced. Are they going to help me? He wondered. Suddenly, one of the creatures stepped forward, a small glowing figure with wings. It didn't speak, but it motioned for Kofi to follow. Without thinking, Kofi stepped forward. The creature led him to a giant stone, covered in more glowing symbols. What was this stone? What secret did it hold? The creature floated ahead, leading Kofi to the giant stone. It was covered in glowing symbols, just like the ones he had seen before. But these symbols were different, larger and more intricate. Kofi felt a pull towards the stone, as if it wanted him to understand something important. The creature pointed to a small indentation in the stone's surface. It seemed to be the perfect size for the gem Kofi carried. His heart raced. Was this the right moment to use the gem? Was it the key to unlocking the stone's secret? Kofi had to decide. Should he place the gem in the stone? Kofi hesitated for a moment, staring at the small indentation in the stone. The creature floated beside him, its glowing eyes watching patiently. Kofi took a deep breath and pulled the gem from his pocket. It glowed brightly, almost as if it was alive, urging him to place it in the stone. With trembling hands, Kofi carefully set the gem in the indentation. The moment it touched the stone, a powerful wave of energy filled the air. The stone began to hum, and the symbols around it lit up in a brilliant flash of light. Kofi stepped back in surprise. What was happening? As Kofi stepped back, the ground shook gently, and the stone started to move. Slowly, the top of the stone lifted, like a door opening. Inside, Kofi saw something shining. Another gem, but this one was different. It was larger, glowing with a soft blue light, and it seemed to pulse with energy. The creature beside Kofi made a soft sound, almost like a hum, and nodded toward the gem. Kofi reached out to touch it, but as his fingers brushed against it, the stone's voice echoed in his mind. This is the final piece, it said. What was the final piece? Kofi stared at the glowing blue gem, his hand hovering above it. The stone's voice echoed again. This is the final piece. With it, you will unlock the greatest secret of the forest. Kofi felt his heart race. What secret? What was the forest hiding? He carefully picked up the gem, and the moment he did, the room around him started to change. The walls of glowing symbols shifted, and the ground beneath his feet began to rise. Suddenly, the floor cracked open, revealing a deep, dark tunnel. Kofi had no choice. He had to go down into the unknown. What awaited him? Kofi felt the cool breeze from the tunnel below, his heart beating fast. He knew he had to go down, but the darkness below felt endless and mysterious. The glowing gem in his hand lit up, casting a soft light in front of him. As Kofi stepped into the tunnel, the walls seemed to close in around him. The air grew colder, and the further he went, the quieter it became. He couldn't hear anything but his own footsteps. Then a distant sound echoed from deep within the tunnel, like a low growl. Kofi stopped. What was making that noise? Was he truly alone? Kofi's heart skipped a beat as the low growl echoed through the dark tunnel. The sound seemed to come from all directions, making the walls feel alive. Kofi gripped the glowing gem tighter, its soft light casting strange shadows on the walls. His steps slowed and he listened carefully. The growl came again, louder this time. Was it an animal or something worse? Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A dark figure, too fast to catch, darted across the tunnel. Kofi froze, staring into the darkness. Was it following him, or was it something he had to face? Kofi's eyes scanned the tunnel, searching for any sign of what had moved. His heart raced, and the tunnel seemed to grow darker the deeper he went. The growl echoed again, but this time it was closer. Kofi could feel something watching him, and he wasn't alone. The shadows shifted, and suddenly a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness. They watched him, unblinking, from the far end of the tunnel. Kofi held his breath. The eyes didn't move, but they seemed to follow him as he took another step. What was it, and what did it want? Kofi's breath quickened as he stared at the glowing eyes. They didn't blink or move, just watched him closely. The growl sphere came again, but this time it was followed by a whisper. You have come far, but this is where it ends. The voice was low and soft, like it was coming from the walls themselves. Kofi felt a cold chill run down his spine. He wanted to run, but his feet felt frozen. The eyes slowly blinked, and a shape began to form in the shadows. Kofi couldn't move. Was it a creature? Or something even darker? What was waiting? The shape in the shadows slowly grew clearer. It wasn't an animal, but something strange. A creature made of darkness. It had no body, just shifting shadows that twisted and moved like smoke. The glowing eyes were the only solid thing about it. Kofi felt his legs shaking, but the creature didn't move closer. Instead, it spoke again, its voice echoing all around. You have been chosen, it whispered, but only the brave can pass through. Kofi didn't understand. Chosen for what? He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Was he ready to face whatever was waiting in the shadows? The shadow creature's glowing eyes watched Kofi as he took a step closer. The voice echoed again. To pass through, you must face the challenge. Kofi's heart raced. A challenge? What did that mean? The creature moved slightly, its form swirling like smoke, but it didn't approach. The path you seek is beyond, but not all can reach it, it said. Kofi felt his palms sweat. What kind of challenge would he face? The darkness around him seemed to press in, but Kofi knew he couldn't turn back now. He had come too far. Whatever the challenge, he had to face it. The creature's glowing eyes flickered as it spoke again. Only those who are pure of heart can pass. Kofi felt a wave of confusion. What did it mean to be pure of heart? Before he could ask, the shadows around him began to shift. The tunnel walls seemed to stretch and change. The air grew thick, and Kofi felt a strange pressure in his chest. Suddenly, the path ahead split into two, one dark and one glowing faintly. Choose carefully, the creature whispered. One path leads to safety, the other to danger. Kofi had no choice but to choose. Which path would he take? Kofi stood in front of the two paths, his heart pounding. The glowing path seemed inviting, but the dark one felt mysterious and dangerous. The creature's voice echoed in his mind. Only the brave choose the right path. Kofi glanced down at the glowing gem in his hand. It pulsed with warmth, almost as if it was guiding him. He took a deep breath and stepped towards the glowing path. But as soon as his foot touched the ground, the light flickered and the path grew darker. Was this the right choice? What would happen if he went the other way? Kofi's heart raced as the glowing path darkened. The air felt colder, and the shadows seemed to move around him. He could hear strange whispers, but couldn't tell where they came from. His feet felt heavier with every step, but he kept going, trusting the gem in his hand. Suddenly the path split again, and Kofi saw two doors in front of him, one black and one white. Each door had a symbol on it, but Kofi couldn't understand what they meant. The creature's voice echoed in his mind again. Choose wisely, for this is your final test. Which door should he open? Kofi stood frozen, staring at the two doors. The black door was covered in sharp, dark symbols, while the white door was smooth, glowing softly. He felt torn. Which one was the right choice? The whispers in the air grew louder, but they still didn't make sense. Kofi touched the glowing gem in his hand, and it pulsed with warmth, as if trying to help him decide. Trust your heart, the creature's voice whispered in his mind. Kofi took a deep breath and stepped forward. With a shaky hand, he reached for the white door. What would happen if he was wrong? Kofi slowly pushed the white door open, feeling a strange warmth spread through him. As it creaked, the air seemed to sparkle with energy, and the whispers faded into silence. He stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind him. The room was bright, filled with soft golden light, but there was something unusual about it. Everything looked the same. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, like the one in the stone chamber. On it was another gem, even more dazzling than the others. Kofi took a step forward. What was this new gem? What would it unlock? Kofi couldn't believe his eyes. The new gem on the pedestal was brighter than anything he had seen before. Its light seemed to fill the whole room, and Kofi felt drawn to it. As he reached out to touch it, a voice echoed in his mind. This is the final gem. It holds the power to reveal the forest's deepest secrets. Kofi hesitated. What secrets could it reveal? Was he ready for the truth? As his fingers brushed the gem, the room began to shake, and the walls cracked open, revealing a hidden passage. Where would this passage lead? What truth awaited him? The hidden passage was dark, with only the light from the gem to guide Kofi. As he stepped forward, the walls around him began to glow, showing ancient markings Kofi had never seen before. The path twisted and turned, and strange sounds filled the air. It was as if the forest itself was alive, whispering secrets just out of reach. Kofi's heart beat faster with every step. Was he getting closer to the truth? He continued on, feeling both excited and afraid. The deeper he went, the more the path seemed to pull him forward. What would he find at the end?